Hey guys, Tatil here for another video. So I talked in my last video about doing a calf video, just to talk about calves, some of the things I see a lot of people talk about with calves, and just kind of debunk some of it, just talk about it, say how some of it's true, but there's still things that we can do to grow our calves. So probably based on the way that I titled this, not that it's entirely clickbait, but it's got to be a little bit clickbaity, so some people click on it. But calves are not all genetics, which is true. Let's get the stuff out of the way though that is kind of true about that. So your muscle insertions are determined by your genetics, so there's nothing that you can do about that. I am taller, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have a higher calf insertion, but I also happen to have a higher calf insertion and I'm taller. So that means it is very difficult, almost impossible for me to fill out my calf, just because it is a very tiny insertion. It doesn't go all the way down to my Achilles, or it doesn't connect really low on my lower leg, and that's just something that I've got to work around if I want to grow my calves. So my insertions are high. I'm taller, and so I can technically put more muscle on it, but it's still not going to look as filled out. If I get my calves to 18 inches versus somebody that's shorter than me and there's a 16 inches, theirs might still look bigger, just because theirs is going to look more filled out if they have a more full calf insertion. If their calves are bigger overall, they're picking up the garbage outside right now. Um, so let's look at something else that I see a lot of people talk about that is kind of true. So some people are just going to have better calves by default. Some people are going to be genetically gifted in that. And so me saying that calves are not all genetics is kind of, there's a caveat to that. Some people it is all genetics and they don't do calves at all and they have good genetics. But the way that I would look at it is everybody more than likely has a standout body part that they could skip. I could skip trap training. Like, I could not do shrugs. I could not do things that train my traps at all, and they would probably still be the same, relatively same. I'm sure it's based on the way that I live. Some of the other movements that I do, that they still get trained enough that I don't necessarily have to train them directly, but I still train them. But everybody has a body part they can skip. I have to do forearms. Somebody could probably skip forearms and never have to do forearms. Some people don't have to train. For me, I don't have to train chest as intensely or as focused as I have to train anything else. My back has to be a lot more focused, and I have to be really putting effort into it to grow it. And the same goes for calves. Some people are just going to be gifted in the calves to not have to train them at all or even as hard to get good calf growth. People with a heavier body weight tend to have bigger calves. So if somebody's 400 pounds, somebody that's kind of obese, they're probably going to have really good calves. The place that I work, I see a lot of people, just because I people watch a lot all day because I'm walking around, and I see a lot of bigger people with good calves, which even lean calves, good calves, you don't carry a lot of fat in your calves most of the time unless you're at a very, very high body weight. But I see people that I know don't train their calves with really big calves, but that's just because they're walking around on those calves all the time, putting a lot of weight on them. Shorter people are going to require less muscle to fill it out. So just kind of how I talked about before, if somebody's 5'5", and they might only need a 15 to 16 inch calf to make it look really good, really filled out, and especially if they have a lower calf insertion. If somebody's still got a short calf insertion, it's still going to be kind of the same thing as me. So some taller people, if they are blessed and they have a very low calf insertion, and they can basically put on a lot of muscle, or it's, if they have a lower calf insertion and they don't have to train them as much, they're gonna get a double whammy, because they could probably get theirs to 18, 19 inches or however big, 17, 18-inch calves. They may not have to try hard, and those things are going to look baller, and those calves will look way better than mine can ever look, no matter how much effort I probably put into them, just because I'm not gifted in that respect, and I'm willing to admit that we're not gifted with everything. We've got to know where we lack and stuff that we can still work on, but maybe you're just not going to match up to something, which is totally fine. So I'll give it to that. That is maybe all genetics to them. But that's also does not speak lowly of somebody saying, you're like, your calves are all genetics, you didn't work for it. Somebody's out there has built their calves, they've tried really hard and they built it. So you can't just go out and say everybody that has a good pair of calves is just blessed by genetics. You don't know who worked for it. Some people maybe didn't, but some people, I'm sure really went and pushed really hard, and they had to put in a lot of extra effort to get their calves where they wanted them. So let's talk about some of the things that are not genetics with your calves that you can still work on. So all muscles can be grown. Every single muscle on your body can be grown. Some muscles are going to be a lot harder than others. So if I skip my forearms, if I skip bicep training, obviously they're not going to grow at all. So if I skip my calf training, I can't expect them to grow. Granted, I will say that for calves, you can still train them pretty hard, and you may not get a lot out of it. So that there's a caveat to that. But if you don't train your calves at all, they're definitely not going to grow. The thing about training your calves is you need to go in there and you need to figure out how you need to train them to actually get them to grow. So another thing that's different about calves and something that you can do differently is there's different training implementations that you can do. So I have a few written down here. So let's talk about them. So you can do supersets at the beginning of a workout. Recently, I've been doing calves with my very beginning of my leg day. So that way I'm still pretty fresh for them. It's a superset, so you're not the most fresh, but it's better than doing it at the end of my workout whenever my legs are already exhausted. You can do lengthened partials at the end of a set. So after you finish your very last set, you can do a full range of motion set, and then at the very end, just get in some lengthened partials. I'm not a really big science guy, so I don't get all into the science, but recently I wouldn't be able to quote, or I wouldn't be able to even drop a reference to what the study was, but lengthened partials are supposed to be pretty good now. I've been messing around with them for triceps, and it's something that I've seen is kind of working. I haven't done a ton more than that just because I'm trying it out to see if it works for me. But lengthened partials is a good thing that you could implement for your calves. Drop sets on your very last set. So if you do your last set of calves, you've done all your 3, 4, 5 sets. And on your very last set, just take off a little bit of the weight and then just keep going. And with some of these, I would maybe not do them every week. So I would do a drop set maybe once or twice a month. You could do it, or if you can do it every week, you can do it every week. But I would say if you could do a drop set every week, you could probably just be training your calves a little bit harder, just because a drop set is going to take a lot out of you. Doing a bunch of lengthened partials may take a lot out of you. Lengthened partials I don't think are as bad as doing a drop set, but doing a drop set, taking off some weight, and then going absolutely to failure again could take a lot out of you. So if you can do that every single week, you might be able to do a little bit harder calf training. Depends on everybody. And a really big thing for calves is upping the frequency. So doing 3 to 4 times a week. I used to train my calves 3 to 4 times a week. I think I do them 2, sometimes 3 now, and I'm going to start upping them because my calves have essentially stalled out. So I haven't seen a lot of calf growth over the last like 2 or 3 months. Which, who might have talked about genetics if my calves aren't growing, and I don't have the best calf genetics. But the reason that I'm saying all this is I know there's something that I can do to figure out how to make my calves grow. I just need to go out there and I need to figure it out. So I don't have any calf machine at home at the home gym. So the only place I'm able to do a really good full range of motion is at the gym. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of overloading, doing a barbell with a barbell on my back, doing just standing calf raises, which doesn't give you a good full stretch, but I'm able to overload it. So I'm looking at it in that aspect. At the gym, I'm doing standing calf raises where I can actually get a really good full deep stretch. And then something that I've kind of been implementing here is just doing some, this is going to sound silly, but I kid you not, this is not a joke. I've been doing some walking on my tiptoes, on my tippy toes I've been doing it for time. I'm going to start adding a weighted vest. And that's just because my calves have completely stalled out when they're growing. So I should be able to do something. And so I'm just going to kind of test around, mess with stuff. I have the home gym equipment. I have the time to do it. So why not just mess around and see what else I can maybe figure out, what else I could do to spur some new calf growth. But that's part of what it is. If your calves are stalled, or any muscle group really that's stalled, you're going to have to mess around with it and try and see if you can find a way to continue, or some way to spur some new growth, some way to get it to grow. So, but doing more volume or more frequency is good. And you don't even have to necessarily do more volume, but doing more frequency, spread out. Your calves work every single day because we're always on our feet, or you're always walking around. I guess it depends if you do a very sedentary job, but even with a sedentary job, you're still having to move around. Whenever you move around, you're on your calves. Your calves are used to a lot of volume overall just from the movement. So you need to do more to spur in some new growth there. So higher frequency can always be a very good thing. So just a few things to keep in mind, and then I'll be finished with you guys here. So keep in mind, so 2 to 3 variations for training calves. 2 is fine, doing 1 seated, 1 standing. You can do more, but I think just keeping it very simple with calves is fine. Doing a bunch of extra stuff is not necessary. So doing 1 standing variation, 1 seated variation. I do 2 standing variations, but that's just because I don't have a seated one here. If I'm able to get a seated calf machine at the home gym, that's what I'm going to do. But I think just 2 variations is fine. You don't have to do a bunch of variations. I think doing standing and doing seated ones are fine. Or you could just do standing. I would probably just do the standing. I wouldn't just do the seated ones, just because you're able to get a really good stretch doing the standing ones, in my opinion. But I would really do both, so that way you're getting a good variety in there. So I would measure your calves to track and see what's working, what's not working. The reason that I know that my calves are stalled is because once a month, I do all my body measurements. So I know I would have to look on my phone that I'm recording with, so I can't. I would have to look to see exactly how many months my calves have stalled out, but I think it's 2 or 3, maybe even 4. They're stuck right at 15. I may need to eventually, what I might need to do is put on a little bit more body weight, so that way I can help kind of spur some new growth from walking around at a higher body weight. But we will wait and see. I'm going to mess with some other things and see what I can do. If I can still progress in calves, even if they're not growing, that'll be a good. That should still be a good sign. If I can still try and put some more weight on there, do it for more reps, do it for more sets over the long term. But the only reason I know that is because I measure my calves, so I know how big they are and how big they are either not getting or how big they are getting. And the last thing is, just like the rest of your training, you have to be consistent and put in a full effort. So you can't say that you don't have big calves or calves are all genetics, or you've tried if you've only tried for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if you've only tried for a year. Training is a long-term game. It's about the 10 to 15 years. It's not about the 1 to 2 years. It's not even about the 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years can still get you a lot of progress, but I would look at it in the long term of what can I do in 10 to 15 years. So you don't have to specialize in muscle group for 10 to 15 years, but I would still look about it as, if I can consistently put in this calf training over 5 to 10 years, what can I get out of it? Instead of, if I, I've blasted my calves for 2 months, or I've trained really hard on my calves for a few weeks and they still haven't grown, so I'm going to give up. That's not the way to look at it. Training overall is a long-term game. If we did that with all of our training, if we didn't make progress, then we wouldn't be anywhere. So calves are the same exact thing. You need to put a full effort into it at the end of the day. So tell me if you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys agree with me, let me know down below. If you disagree with me, let me know down below. I'm working on a Goku program. So I did a poll on my Instagram, and a lot of people seem to wanted a Goku program. So we're going to do that. I can already tell you it's going to be a 4-day-a-week program. It'll be 3 upper body sessions, 1 lower body session. I'll get into a lot more detail on the video of that. I will probably release it on my Instagram in a shorter form, and then release it on here and do a good 20, 30-minute video where I can just ramble and talk about why I programmed everything, how I programmed it, how you can run the program. If you guys want to see more anime style training or anime style workouts, let me know. I think that's something interesting that I can do, just because I enjoy watching anime. I'm sure you can tell by the headband, the pain behind me, but we can see what we can do. I can do workouts, different routines, things of that. But just let me know what you guys want to see on this channel, and I'm going to try and be consistent. And maybe a video a week, at least once a month, but try and do maybe a video a week. Come up with some ideas, so that way I can keep the YouTube consistent, because this is a good way to release some longer form content and be able to ramble, just kind of talk about training and things that I see on the internet, things that I see in the gym that I don't feel like get discussed, or feel like that I can give my opinion on now after working out for about 6 to 7 years. Thank you guys. Talk to you soon.